I'm standing in waist deep water. The rope was strong enough to slow my fall, but not strong enough to break my neck. So I'm relatively unhurt. I have a scar on my neck and my foot hurts a little bit. And I just went off a 40-foot bridge. I'm standing there in the water wondering why I'm alive.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors so that we can hear their stories. Every year, around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. And when we do talk about it, many of us, including me, we're not very good at it. So, one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations, and hopefully better conversations with attempt survivors. I am going to keep trying. Now, we are talking about suicide, so this may not be a good fit for everyone. Please take that into account before you listen. I do hope you listen because there is so much to learn. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to share your story, I'd love to talk. Please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com or on Facebook or Twitter @suicidenoted. I want to thank all of our attempt survivors who have joined me on this podcast, who have shared so openly and honestly, and to everyone who continues to listen every week to these stories by these survivors. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all of your support. In addition to listening, if you want to help us out, there's a few other things you can do. One, you could let people know about this podcast. Two, you can rate or review this podcast if you listen on Apple Podcasts. That really does help people find it. And finally, you can make a financial contribution, a one-time contribution or an ongoing contribution. I'll put that information in the show notes. Whatever kind of support you'd like to offer, we really appreciate it. So again, thank you. Today, I am talking with Lance. Lance lives right here in North Carolina, and he is a suicide attempt survivor. Hey, Lance, let's jump right in. Two-part question. How did you find the podcast? And then why did you want to talk to me?
I found the podcast on Facebook. I had a moment, I don't know what you would call the opposite of an epiphany, but something, whatever the opposite of epiphany is, after I survived. So I'm standing in waist deep water. The rope was strong enough to slow my fall, but not strong enough to break my neck.
Right.
So I'm relatively unhurt. I have a scar on my neck and my foot hurts a little bit. And I just went off a 40-foot bridge. I'm standing there in the water wondering why I'm alive.
It's not an epiphany, though. What is it?
Yeah, it's the opposite of an epiphany. It's a momentary heightened sense of the full-blown knowledge of how little you actually know.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would put it.
No, but in a way, that's also an epiphany.
Okay, I had an epiphany as to how much I didn't know. Most people have to wonder why they're alive once. I had to wonder twice. And so I thought about all the people that day that had tried to kill themselves. And they did it. Right?
Some did. Yep. Well, if they
did, right?
Yep.
You know. So any chance I get to try to, so far I can count on one hand the number of people I've helped and hopefully steered in the right direction to get help. To be that intermediate step between that awkward phase where you're subconsciously or semi-consciously asking for help before you attempt, or you're really in a bad place, you can't. So far, about 5 people I've helped get help. I'm by no means a doctor, but I'm like, they call me, they say, Lance, whatever, and I say, let's go get help or whatever, and we do that. And that seems to be what I should do for the privilege of still walking around. I have some kind of severe clinical depression.
Okay.
I've been diagnosed with several different flavors of it, from monopolar to just depression, seasonal affective disorder, whatever. Moving to North Carolina seems to clear everything up.
Where'd you move from?
New Hampshire.
When do you recall the first time you were like, something's wrong?
I was about 9.
Okay, so this is going back a ways.
I was told that they were not panic attacks. I would just have crying fits. And I
Okay.
would just break down and I would cry. And I remember them starting right about when I was 9 or 10 years old. Just one of those sensitive kids. I always took things the wrong way. I always took things in a very dark way. It became normal around my teenage years
Okay.
to what they would call now suicidal ideation. There's always a plan B. If today is really tough, I can always, in my teens, and some events and reaching out and breaking down. And then it only got worse and more deep and intermittent as I grew older. And I always hid it, didn't come out and admit things. And it got just worse and worse. And I got withdrawal from my wife, my children.
Were you trying to treat it in any way with medication, be it legal or otherwise, therapy, whatever?
I lucked out in that I did not try to self-medicate in any illegal way. I can't tell you why. It's not like I didn't have access to it. I'm just one of those guys where it's hard for me to finish a beer,
Really?
Yeah, I'll come in hot summer day. I'll come in, I have like one beer and I'm like, it's enough. But just not a drinker.
Might be a
Um,
blessing, yeah?
Yeah, probably. New Hampshire's cold and dark. I fix heat for a living. I go through a lot of jobs, but it's brutal work. You're wearing a snowsuit and shoveling stuff out and going into basements and fixing boilers and things. And there's not a lot of sunlight. I've become withdrawn from Christina, my wife, and the kids. And I've done irreparable harm to those relationships, really, I think. Especially my daughter, Charlotte, who almost won't have anything to do with me, trying to fix that. But
So are you still married, Lance?
I'm in the last phases of a divorce. I was separated for several years down here in North Carolina. It was one of those weird things, change of venue things. After the 14th different antidepressant and the fourth or fifth hospitalization, for me, it seemed that institutionalization was more about keeping everybody else safe than helping me.
Yeah,
Uh,
often. Yeah, makes sense. You're right.
but for example, after my attempt, it took me 3 days of waiting in the hospital to get a bed.
Ditto.
Yeah, and then even after I get in, it was 10 days. New Hampshire State Mental Institution.
Oh, you're up north. And then you get a big bill. That doesn't help your mental health too much,
I
does
get a
it?
bill. I would describe it as a slow spiral. And I did reach out for help. My poor, long-suffering first wife, Christina, had to return 3 or 4 shotguns that I had bought. And I was hospitalized 3 times voluntarily. You try to get help and you take meds and you try to work and different meds and things never quite took. And it was always there. And then it just got me. It just got me.
What was your age range when this was going on? Like you were talking about your
was-
first wife and the hospitalizations.
That was in my 30s.
So it's been
And
going on
then,
for some time.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah.
It's, I guess, ironic to call suicide a lifestyle, but Arthur C. Clarke said, "Life is wonderful and death is peaceful. It's transition that's the problem."
That's right. They don't make it easy, Lance.
No, it can't make it easy. So late 30s, hospitalizations, trying to get
Yeah.
help, still keeping it very private, and then all the privacy stuff after my attempt and going to the state hospital, being involuntarily committed. That all I just stopped being private about it, and because it felt ridiculous to be alive. If you did that 10 times, 9 times out of 10, knock yourself out, swallow some water, dead, break your back, break your legs, and I shouldn't be here. So, to be private about it seems wrong on a lot of levels, basically.
And you formally tried, however you define that, once.
Well, I would get as far as buying the shotgun and the ammo and going someplace quiet up on a nice hilltop that me and my dad used to go hiking on. I got about that far twice.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would call Christina. Then I would go to a hospital for a couple of days, not weeks.
Right.
Thank
Just
you, David.
in and out.
If you break a leg, they could take an x-ray and say the leg is still broken, the leg is healed. People don't have a dipstick in the back of their neck for serotonin levels.
Right.
And even if we did, we can't tell you what normal is. It's out of some Woody Allen sketch that they sit you down and say, Lance, do you hear voices? Do you want to hurt yourself? Do you want to hurt other people? Now, I mean, they could just ask you, Lance, do you want to leave the hospital today? Because that's what they're really asking you encoded in those 3 questions.
So silly, right? Yeah, sure.
After 4 or 5 of those, and then another trip back to the hospital, even after my attempt, I only made it 6, 8 months out of the hospital after my attempt from the bridge that I went back.
What was different about your life or the events leading up to the bridge, which I don't know how you define attempt, but is the most attempt of the attempts, right? The closest you came.
I would drive over that bridge every day.
Right.
Now, there are bridges in Manchester, and we lived in Manchester. I didn't think about bridges in Manchester, but I thought about this bridge.
Where was this bridge?
Piscataqua River Bridge.
Did something happen that day, or was it just the right day? Do you know?
It was the right day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a peaceful, sunny day. I would try to explain to people that don't have depression, like if you saw somebody who was on fire jump off a bridge, you'd go, well, they're on fire. They're trying to,
reasonable response.
So imagine being emotionally on fire. I can't explain.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard. You got to get creative with your language about how to make it connect with people, right?
Yeah, I'm like, what's the saddest you've been? Right? And they'll say, well, whatever. But okay, now imagine that same sadness not connected to anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your grandmother died or someone ran over your dog. Okay. It feels that bad, but it's not connected to anything at all. I had a very angry physical form of depression where I had some physical body aches and anger to it and things. Yeah. I had the plan and why not now?
And you did it.
Oh yeah. So sometimes it seems like a million years ago, and sometimes it seems like it was 15 minutes ago.
So just to be clear, you tried to jump off of a bridge, correct?
I tied a noose on my neck.
Yeah.
Tied it to the bridge and jumped off the bridge.
What actually happened? I know you mentioned it. What actually happened?
They think the rope was strong enough to slow me down, but not strong enough to break my neck. So it took up a bunch of energy and snapped and dropped me lovingly in the water without enough momentum to hurt my legs.
And then what happened?
I rolled around in the water. I stood up and I took the noose off. Really strangely, it's exactly what happened. There was some chubby firefighter in like a bike helmet and a life vest, and he was in this repurposed bass boat that the Franklin Fire Department has. And they came over, and I was standing, not swimming. I was standing in waist deep water, and they threw me a rope.
Did they happen to be there, or did someone call them?
Time is a little bit iffy. There's some black period after I jumped. You roll around the water, stand up, cough, sneeze, whatever, pull the water up, get the rope off my neck, and then it feels like a 1, 2, 3 count. Then this rope appears in front of me. It's a little fuzzy. It could have been a war.
Right, because I don't know. We don't know. Was that like, is that a place where people are hanging out, or was no one around?
No. They had to put it down a boat ramp that was a little bit further down. So it must have been some period of time. Yeah, didn't have real good concept of time.
Understandable. I always ask this question, what's it like to want to be that close to killing yourself, and then you wake up, or whatever the equivalent of that is in this case, and you're still here? It's like, are you like, what the fuck? Are you angry? Are you relieved? Are you?
I was very angry.
Yeah.
Because I'm a very private person, or at least was at the time. And I tried to quietly go away and do it. And then all of a sudden I was a spectacle. I was very angry at myself. And then I was genuinely afraid, because there was a lot of testosterone on the side of the Franklin. Firefighters and the cops are there. This crazy, wet, long-haired guy. It was a little bit spooky. I asked to be handcuffed. Followed the rope to the boat, and I got in the boat, and I asked to be handcuffed, and I was put into an ambulance. And they talked about me like I wasn't there.
Yep.
Check is this, check is that. these medical people ran their hands all over me looking for broken bones. And the only thing hurt on me was the heel of my left foot and the scar on my neck. Anger, fear, humiliation, just awestruck, really. I didn't think it never occurred to me that could happen.
What, that you could try or that you would live?
That the rope would dynamically break my fall, but not my neck. I'd be standing there like a jackass.
Do you think that was divine intervention?
It certainly meets the criteria in my mind for something like that. And I've had lots of people tell me, "Oh, there's a reason you're here. There's a reason you're here." Like, well, okay, so let's assume that they're right and assume there's a reason I'm here. And what should I do? Try to help people. For me, having depression, the face of depression for middle-aged white guys isn't that, strangely enough, is not that well represented. You see ads and things. It's, young women and teenage kids, and stuff like that. But a lot of middle-aged white guys off themselves.
Yes.
It really isn't talked about a lot. And there's the whole guy code thing, I don't need help. And I think some of the stigma is actually from some of the advertising. Because so many people with depression use drugs and alcohol. If you have depression and you're not an alcoholic or a druggie, you're not a young teenage girl, you know what I mean? You don't see yourself in the literature, you don't see yourself in the education, you don't see yourself publicity of it. I mean, you can't even get a guy to go get their colon checked. Let alone go talk to somebody about their feelings.
Middle-aged men are also very, as a percentage, and for lack of a better word, more successful when they try. One reason being they use guns. Part of this very complicated paradigm, but it makes sense what you're saying.
I wanted to go talk about my attempt with the New Hampshire State Police. I thought they would find it very edifying. And I was told in no uncertain terms that they're fine and that they have an outreach program and an 800 number, and they have a psychologist on staff who's also an officer to help the troopers. Mm-hmm. Like, what a crock of shit, really. The most likely person to shoot a police officer is themselves. And then you have, vet techs that put animals down every day because people can't afford to fix them, and they're offing themselves all over the place. And people don't really talk about it that much because it's an introverted thing. Mm-hmm. The public likes to engage when there's a possibility that it could affect them. If someone goes out and kills 5 people in a public place, they go, "Wow, I shop at that mall," or "Wow, my kid goes to school." If someone quietly goes off and offs himself, there's some people that think there should be less middle-aged white people. So,
there probably are. I find it really interesting when I engage with someone in a conversation that clearly is uncomfortable. For example, if I'm sharing something that I'm dealing with, you suck at that, and you're either unaware or you don't want to make some really minor tweaks just to create a space for someone to talk, but you're going to be that champion, making sure everyone knows about that 1-800 crisis line. And I'm thinking, that's cool. I mean, of course, put that out on your social media. But man, I just heard you, and you're invalidating the shit out of me, man.
Yeah.
You're just doing all this, all the crap that people say, all the things that, even if they're well-intentioned, it just doesn't help. And it just makes me think go figure. Okay. I mean, I don't know what I'm saying here, Lance, so if it makes sense.
What I'm saying is the media is not helping men with depression, except veterans groups, because you'll see veterans getting help, and they pick regular looking soldier type people. Okay. And we need more of that for regular folks, because when they talk about depression and they depict people with depression, they're not depicting the spectrum of people and it's a bell curve thing. It's the young and the old. It's someplace where middle-aged white guys are underrepresented.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get some women's activists to help me with that and make things equal.
And there's probably some reason why it's that way, but I don't know if it makes me wonder. Yeah.
There's some fundamental. I'm not a psychologist by any means, but there's something fundamentally different in how men and women get sad. More women get depression, perhaps, or they're more sensitive to it.
Mhm.
But it seems that men act more effectively on it.
I mean, the numbers of women attempting suicide are quite high. It's just that the men are more effective at it. So
Right.
you're
So
talking about something much broader about depression, but if we go,
men and women attempt suicide about the same rate, right? But men kill themselves, complete the task more often.
correct.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Women try with pills. That doesn't work very often.
Women try with pills.
I mean,
And men-
I'm generalizing, but that's the most common way. How many people to this day know about your suicide attempt from the bridge?
Well, I tried to make it as many people as possible.
Okay.
I did that by having Frank Duckler from the Concord Monitor pick me up from the hospital and do a story about it. And I was so disgusted by everything in there and everything going on and with myself and my family, not with my family, with what I had done to my family,
Mhm.
trying to hide all of this. And I'm like, enough is enough. And I was being told, oh, you're never going to work again in your chosen profession, because I was a gas fitter in New Hampshire. I was licensed to fix gas appliances.
Why would a suicide attempt preclude you from doing that work?
Oh, I was told that by people that didn't know what they were talking about, that I couldn't work in my chosen profession anymore, probably. It was just disability, and take a bunch of lithium and sit on a couch the rest of my life. And you can't tell people about this and all that. And did I get a little flack, a little weirdness? Yes. But essentially, I got checked out by a doctor, kept my chosen profession, and I went back to work after I got out.
So most people do. I mean, they have to get back to their lives, right? They got to eat food, and it's
right. Well, I mean, but I think if I had done this in 1950,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
with the way the state hospitals were, I would have been on Thorazine or something, dramatic like that. Yeah. So everybody knows.
It sounds like you've had a lot of conversations with people that I don't know if they're well intentioned or not. I don't know how to gauge that, but if you're anything like most people say stupid shit.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't understand it all myself, John. People come up to me and talk to me about angels or see a light or things like that, and I'm like, no. Why are you alive and why is my brother dead?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
How are people doing this? Do you have like a social media space? Where does this happen?
There was some letters and things from the newspaper article.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I would do talks about. I was in Toastmasters. I do talks about it, and I would get these 0 and 10 reactions.
Oh Jesus!
So I would. Some people would be like, "Thank you for talking about this. We need to reduce the stigma. Silence is death." All this people. And then there are other people going, "You're not a doctor. How dare you talk about this? People are going to jump off bridges because you're irresponsibly talking about it." Like they can catch it. And I'm of two minds. About it. I do talk about, hey, I'm not going to ask people to raise their hands, all right? But if this is what I'm going to talk about. And if you're comfortable about it, you could just go,
Absolutely. You can leave.
You can leave.
You can leave.
If you feel unsafe and you feel bound up and triggered right now, hold on. We're going to do the talk.
Yeah.
And after the talk, go to me and we'll get you help right now. If you recognize what we're talking about here today. I'm not a doctor, but I'm not going to leave anybody hanging.
Sure.
And things like that. But 0 and 10 reaction. There's still people that whisper the word cancer, like it can hear you. Well, what happened to Mary? She got the cancer. It's mental health issues are highly stigmatized. I feel so lucky to be alive, and I've been so awestruck by the fact that I walked away from something so incredibly stupid that it feels dishonest not to tell everybody about it in a demure New Hampshire type of way.
How long you been living in North Carolina?
About 3 years.
Is it any different down here?
Oh, it's like night and day. Night
Okay.
and day. I was in a semi-fugue state, and a friend of mine was down here and said, "Come on down to North Carolina. It's great. Live here for rent free." I was casting about for some sort of solution, and decided to try just to change venue. And instead of crawling back home, my tail between my legs, a week later, I blossomed down here.
Oh, you enjoying it?
I am, yeah, I'm not on any meds. I don't have depression. I don't think about killing myself.
What?
What?
Well, what
Uh,
changed? Is it just location, or is it a little bit of serendipity with like we don't know had you stayed else, maybe this would still be happening and things would be good, but we don't know, right? Because we can't know that.
I think it is a lot to do with sunlight in my case.
Ah, maybe so.
And I just had a more positive experience down here and a clean slate down here. Jennifer, the woman I'm seeing now, is wonderful. She keeps me on the straight and narrow. She's very honest with me. She helps a lot. My soon to be ex wife, Christina, has been awesome. We're communicating better and healing things up as much as we can. I mean, I destroyed everything. I burned every bridge with bad decisions back in New Hampshire, but she's been a great co-parenting with the kids. And my two sons, Owen and Jeremy, are great. We're trying to fix that stuff up. And Charlotte would probably kill me just for saying your name on a podcast, trying to fix things up there. That's where it is. I wish I do. I mean, I write about it and I think about it and it comes back to me. As a technician, when we're going to fix something, the question you're asking is what changed? Why doesn't this machine work? Something changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
The set mechanical thing, something changed. That doesn't work. I went from that situation down here where I was being told, oh, you have to take meds the rest of your life. You have to go to therapy the rest of your life. And group therapy would be good too, Lance. And, you're always going to have this thing, waiting in the back of your head to kill you, to not having it anymore down here. And not having it in Connecticut either. I'm in Connecticut. Can't get into New Hampshire. Are just about as dreary, same dreariness.
Right.
Mystery number 3. Why am I here? Why am I here again? And why am I better? I wish I could tell you and then recognize the pattern in other people and help them.
Sure.
I will say my best theory is that there are many people in bad situations that are taking medications instead of changing their life.
Sure.
If you were meant to be an impressionist or an accountant and you go to work every day doing something that crushes your soul,
how could you not
should
be
be
depressed? Right. That would be
You
a very
should be.
bizarre response if you weren't depressed.
and you take the money and you pay your mortgage and you want to get kids into school and you self-sacrifice to the point where you crush yourself. Of course you need a pill. I've never encountered a psychiatrist where you wouldn't leave with a pill.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to a pizzeria, you're going to leave with a pizza. If you go to a barbershop, well, except you, Sean, you're going to get a haircut.
This is I do this all myself, man. It's great.
If you go to Baskin Robbins, there's 32 different flavors, but you're going to leave with an ice cream. People are going to their doctors and they're getting pills.
Yes, that's a big part of medicine.
Our doctor's asking, "Hey, Sean, what do you do for a living?" "Oh, I'm an accountant."
Len, good doctors do that.
They do?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
there probably aren't a lot of them, but yes, the good ones, they're aware of that. But I think they're hard to come by.
What's the term? Blocked wish thing that they talk about?
I don't know.
Having a block can be really bad for you. Give you this sort of metaphysical tumor, basically.
Yeah. When you were giving your talks, what was the main takeaway in those talks? What was the point?
The point is that we need more bad examples to come forward,
mm-hmm.
and to stop doing this thing where we have these people that never really had problems give advice.
So you're really trying to speak to people who are suffering, and maybe, hey, if you speak up, it'll help.
Yeah, in their regular livelihood people. People look sideways at the a-hole trust fund baby who climbed Mount Everest, or they might respect an astronaut, but can you relate to an astronaut?
This is story
what I
writing
mean?
or speech crafting 101. There's a myth around.
Yeah.
We don't fucking give a shit about the astronaut who went to the moon. We don't relate to that. We relate with people's struggles and flaws, and don't believe the marketing fucking hype around these bullshit stories of your triumphs. It's a myth. It's not true. I spend a lot of time in the world of story, and I know it works. I know it relates, and that doesn't.
I love storytelling, and I would much rather hear the stories of a guy whose father immigrated from Greece, and he was a mechanic.
Sure.
And how the son learned to be a mechanic, and now they have 3 garages, and how they grew a business in America, and all the horrible things that happen, and things like that. That's a guy who you would listen to, and when the guy says, "Hey, maybe you should talk to somebody," they would listen to him, and they would go talk to somebody. We live in a world that has a billion channels and nothing is on.
Mm-hmm.
And what expands into that are know nothing people that are famous for being famous, influencers, people who create content with a very small c, and then they latch on to whatever buzzword is flying by them at the time, and someone will kill themselves, and they'll all go, "Oh, suicide awareness this week," and everyone will be talking about suicide.
Yep.
And they'll put up every trope of
crazy
of the people that don't do it that much or that effectively, or they say, "Call this 800 number, donate $5, and on to the next buzzword," and it's not that great. But we're humans. We like stories. We relate to stories, and unfortunately, the craft of storytelling has been spun into marketing.
Yep.
Somebody else writes a story, and other talking head tells a story, and then someone films the story, and then they, when's the last time you sat at a kitchen table and had someone who did it tell you the story that happened to them?
I do it every day. It's my life.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
The first thing I do to work with when I worked with old plumbers, I'd always be asking them, "What's the worst thing that ever happened on the job?"
Yeah.
What's the worst helper you had? And we need those about depression, where am I perfect? No. Have I made horrible mistakes? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Am I now an astronaut? No. I'm a regular guy working a job, but I've got 3 ungrateful children and an ex-wife, and I feel lucky to have 3 kids that don't talk to me that much, and an ex-wife. Life is great and goes on, even in its brutal, wart and pimply reality. Enough of the Lifetime movies about depression, where you know what I mean, where they're always a world famous novelist or something. Regular people have it, and it kills a lot of regular people.
A lot of people try, man. I started this podcast in July. You will be like episode number whatever 57. Okay. When I first started, it was twice a week. Now it's once a week because I got involved with some other stuff. Millions of people try to kill themselves every year. That is plural. That is fact. Now, they're not all English speakers, and they might not all have Wi-Fi, but there's a fuckload of people who could be on this podcast, and they're not. And a lot of them just don't know about it, but there's also a lot of people that just don't want to talk about it. I get it. That's all good, man. Only join me here if you want to, you're able to. But it's astounding how few people talk about it.
Yeah.
Like they just won't talk about it. So anyway, I mean, I thank you. You are in the great minority, but hey, chip away.
If you ever run into a group of people, I got a YouTube channel, and I've tried to record the speeches I would give, and then recorded my progress with stand-up.
Is your humor centered on the struggle, on the depression, on the suicide, or is it other stuff?
I have done shows that were specifically geared towards traumedy. People doing comedy sets about bad things that happened to them. I have that video. And then I have the talk I gave at Toastmasters, which had the 0 and 10 response thing. Like, thank you and how dare you. And then I have I have material written about suicide, but learning stand up
Mm-hmm.
and seeing audiences, I have yet to see an audience and go, yeah, these people want to hear about suicide. I see a lot of self-congratulatory comics that get up there and you immediately know how they identify all the way across the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
right? And do humor about that, you know? And I remember, Ralphie May, the comic, the big
Sure,
guy?
big guy.
Yeah, Ralphie May was doing a lot of fat jokes. And the other fat comics in the region got together with him and said, hey, do you want to be a fat comic? Or do you want to be a really good comic that happens to be fat? So I don't want to be a white comic or a male comic or a fat guy comic or a bearded comic or a suicide comic. I want to be a good comic.
Yeah, try to be a funny comic.
Trying to be funny first.
Right.
Steve Martin's advice is first get good. Be so good they can't ignore. You don't need the picture and the website and the Instagram and first get good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm learning not to suck, writing and writing and writing and writing. And someday I'll have a beautiful tight 5 about suicide. Writing comedy about suicide is actually pretty easy. The tough part is the confidence and the attitude and couching the material so that people know that you aren't being flagrantly disrespectful or abusive about it.
When people come to you, you said in the beginning that you've helped 5 people. What did you help them with? What did they need from you, do you think?
In 2 instances, I recognized that somebody wasn't in a position to easily ask for help.
Okay.
And I said, hey, they've seen my stand-up or my talk, or whatever. And I'm like, hey, are you okay? You need some help? And they weren't okay. And so we went and got help. In 3 other instances, I like to call it the classic 2 a.m. phone call. There were people that were more comfortable calling me and saying, hey, Lance, do you think I need to go to the hospital? By the way, if anyone ever calls you and says, hey, Sean, do you think I need to go to the hospital? The answer is always yes.
It's almost always yes. I think you have a comedy bit right there.
People want to feel safe and they want to have validation and they want to have backup on their decisions. And if you're making a scary decision that you need to do, you're going to ask somebody, hey, should I do this? It takes a lot of bravery just to ask. And so you need to help those people and get them into help, Yeah, so 3 of those times were people calling me up out of the blue. And, because I do tell people, I had depression and stuff. So and they reached out to me and says, whoa, dude, when you had depression and you were above the bridge, did you do this? I go, are you thinking about killing yourself? And like, well, I've thought about it, but they go, well, where are you? What? I'll come, pick you up. Let's go talk to somebody. No big deal. It doesn't have to be, but don't let them off the phone and don't make sure someone's with them and get them help, and that it feels good that hopefully helped several people bridge that gap between suffering alone and getting help. The terrible, terrible gap right there.
The space between feeling alone and getting help is a big one. That's where we lose a lot of people.
Yeah. That's why it's so terrible. If you ever do a talk about it, there's no real good way. I'm not about turning the lights off or I'm going to leave the stage and, give the warning and let people leave but how do you leave a group of people without being seen? And if you're going to give a talk that might trigger folks or whatever, you give a preamble and say, if you don't want to hear about this stuff, you can leave.
Yeah.
Humans are not programmed to get up in front of a bunch of people and leave and never have everyone staring at them. Going,
well, you're right. You are in a different spot where you're putting them in a position, but they're adults. I know you're not asking me, but this is what I feel. They're adults. They can leave. When you're talking about stuff we don't talk about, you will get pushback. If you didn't get pushback, we'd be talking about it. There's a reason why people don't talk about it. So if you're not getting pushback, arguably, you're not talking about it enough or in the right way. You should be getting. Now, it doesn't mean you should be saying fucking stupid shit, going out of your way to be triggering. No, but so yes, you have to be aware. But man, if everyone's just sitting there like, yeah, no, wow, that's very powerful. I don't know if you're really getting through to them, they're just being nice.
We're going to know that racism is gone when race is considered like being left-handed. No one gives a crap if you're left-handed or right-handed. People used to. That's how we're going to know. And as an example, I encountered two things, right? Both ends of the bell curve, like I said. People come up and say, thank you. And people come up and say, don't do that again. That's how I know that I'm at the edge.
If you went on a stage and took a big shit, right? People would say, don't do that again. So by them saying don't do that again cannot be the only way to measure it.
There'd be 1% of the population that would love it.
Just because somebody's not liking it doesn't mean it's effective, right? That can't be the only way to measure it. But I think if you've got people that are coming up to you saying, thanks for sharing that, or can I talk to you? That's all you need, man. No?
Yeah. I get up there and I say, listen, I'm not here to talk to everybody.
That's right.
I'm here to talk to probably about a couple of you.
Probably.
And then and I'm here to actually talk to them and the people that they know around them that are going to be affected by it. You talk to 100 people, there's 4 or 5 people in there that have thought about it that week,
Maybe, that week. Yes. Okay.
There's a gun, there's some rope, some pills, there's a sort of a plan, report cards are going to come out, or Christmas, or you're going to break up, or you're going to lose the house. And they say, oh, well, if that happens, and then the tipping point, they're out there. And the funny thing about suicide is that we tell people we're going to kill ourselves. And then people say they don't believe it. I mean, it's sort of weird. It's like we listen to everything else people say, and if you went up to somebody later and say, hey, did you know your father was going to go to the laundromat and then maybe get a sandwich? And he went and did it. People wouldn't go, oh, he talked about it, but I had no idea he would actually do it. People say they're going to kill themselves, right? You do research on this. Most people talk about it. They tell somebody.
I think it's always worth it. You should always believe people, period. Now, does that mean that there are times that people say it and don't mean it? Of course. There are people that cheat the welfare system. Most don't, right? There are people that lie about disability. Most don't. There are people that say in casual, whatever reasons there are, but it doesn't matter. Believe people. However, this is me on my little soapbox now. I think a huge mistake we make is assuming that if you, Lance, tell me I'm really thinking about killing myself, my first response is, we need to get you help. I think we need to get you help. But I, in this moment, can be someone that can be there for you. Not a doctor, not a miracle worker. I'm a guy who might be able to create a space for you to just get something off your chest. And when we immediately say, let's go to a doctor, let's call 911 or call this 1-800 number or blah, 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 you're jumping the gun unless somebody literally has a fucking gun in their hand, which then I don't know what the fuck to do. It's not my milieu. I don't know what to say. Act fast and pray and just try to get the gun out of their hands. Short of that, nobody's going to kill themselves in this moment. Take a fucking breath, mostly shut the fuck up and let someone talk. 90% of the time, that's what they need in that moment. Yes, tomorrow maybe we got to go for a drive. Okay.
Listening is a skill. It's in short supply.
So underappreciated.
Listening and compassion are way up there. What the problem is, we've turned all this stuff, all these things into what we should say, into sort of tropes.
Yep, 100%.
Sean, if you ever need anything, just give me a ring, Sean. Right? How many people say that to you? Right? How many of those people would you actually call at 2 a.m. with problems?
We have gotten very good at disguising the way we invalidate people. Really good with platitudes. The ways we sort of subtly, with nuance sometimes, minimize or deflect. They don't seem that bad, but they're very bad. I'm talking to the people that are doing more harm because it appears as if they're trying to help or really care. Those are the people that are concerning to me. The guy who's like, fucking depressed people are all lame. Like, you're just a dick.
It's the human resource departments, authority figures in minor institutions,
Friends, colleagues, people you meet at a dance class. I get it.
but it's a horribly uncomfortable thing to talk about.
But we've
And
normalized awful listening has become normal, and bullshit has become normal.
yeah, and there's all kinds of vulnerable people that people are championing now who are very vulnerable to suicide. Everyone's talking about the LGBT community, and the rates of suicide for those poor people trying to figure everything out is incredibly high.
Right.
You think that would cause more awareness about it? I don't understand.
I don't think that people on a sort of day-to-day micro level think that they can do much. And I think they're really wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go to a
really
march. You could go march. I mean, that's good. You raise money.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
I'm talking about
Right.
when somebody in your life, most people aren't going to go to anybody like, I'm not talking about the conversations. I'm thinking of killing myself, so that would be included. I'm just talking about your days every day. Man, if people just literally didn't respond right away and gave it like a 3-second or 5-second gap, just that would be a game changer. Just
Recognition.
that would change things. Just start there.
Listen more, talk less. Two ears, one mouth. The other problem I have with having depression is that everyone seems to have it now. Yeah, everyone has all these afflictions. Like, they couldn't sell enough heart meds, so now there's people that have heart disease. Now there's people that have pre-heart disease.
Yeah.
And pre-diabetes. I had clinical depression. I wanted to die every fucking day. I couldn't get out of bed. Other people were just sad or didn't feel so good. So they might as well put the stuff in the tap water and just, get it over with. Because we're all depressed. We're all neurotic. We're all depressed. We're all irrational. And I'm like, no, we're not. I was in the hospital with some crazy motherfuckers. You guys have some little problem, but you're not, you're not depressed. I mean, did you get up this morning? Did you go to work? It waters it down. What people don't water down is suicide.
Mm-hmm.
No one has dared yet to water down suicidal idolation. I'm a little suicidal today. I'm going to call in to work.
It's a different beast entirely. One is a condition. The other is a possible death. It's totally different.
Yeah.
I get that ideating is a mental state, much like depression, but
mental health language has been watered down and poured like gravy over everything. And so everyone now has a diagnosis, not just, a bad day. How many goth chicks that have Twitter accounts say that they're on the autism spectrum? They're like, oh, come on, Blair. You're really not How big is that spectrum, girl? The last people that have rights are the insane. You can't use ethnic slurs. You can't use racial slurs. You can't use religious slurs. You can't Down syndrome. You can't call people bad names that have Down syndrome. You
get it.
But crazy? What are you, crazy?
Will you call people on that?
I'll call them on it when it's really embarrassing and funny, so I know that it sticks. I had a counselor that I saw that shook my hand and said, "Hang in there." And I said, "Really, Charles? Hang in there?"
But that's a little different because that's an actual expression that means something totally different.
Right.
ADHD, ADD, OCD, and I can't prove that you don't have it. It's not my place. You might. It's just a weird way to communicate your impatience, for example, your forgetfulness, and you're using this. For some people, that is the reason they ended up killing themselves. Those conditions can be brutal.
At least people don't say obese so much. They say, they say they're fat. People don't get clinical obese. But they're putting everything on a spectrum, and everyone's sick, and everyone needs to lay in bed. And it's tiring. It's tiring because it's to some degree it adds the stigma or keeps the stigma around, because it still is totally bona fide okay to make fun of white people and crazy people.
Sucks for you, Lance.
Yeah, because I'm white and crazy. So
I was going to actually ask you earlier, do you think you're crazy?
well, there's two definitions. Do I know the difference between right and wrong? Yes, I do. Do I do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result? No. So
I don't know
really
if those
need
are the real definitions or the ones that people have just become used to saying, but maybe so.
Those are the two I've found. No, I am more passionate than regular people. And I think I am more aware of the fact that we are all going to die. I stand up in front of audiences and I dress in an outlandish manner. And the first thing I say is, the question isn't why I am dressed like this, living my best life. The question is, why are all you boring motherfuckers dressed like that? We have a finite amount of time on the planet, and people act like they're going to live forever. And they're really boring, horribly boring. They're going to start living when they retire. They're 65.
What, do you dress outlandishly?
Oh yeah, I got some tuxedos, and I got
like a peacock or something.
Got a not like a peacock, but well, I mean, I got I usually wear some of my gangster tracksuits to the open mics. I got a nice Gucci tracksuit. I'm a fat guy. Thanks again. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate you joining and talking and sharing and all that good stuff, man.
And seriously, I want you to seriously, Sean.
Yes.
Okay. In all seriousness. Okay. Are you listening?
Yes.
You shutting the fuck up?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you can call me anytime you want.
I appreciate that.
It could be an HVAC question, or it could be anything else. Okay. Really. All right.
Noted. Thanks, man.
Shoot you. Have a beautiful evening.
You too, boo. Be well. Oh. As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support, and special thanks to Lance right here in North Carolina. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com or on social media @suicidenoted. And remember, if you listen on Apple, please help us out. Take a moment right now, rate and review this podcast. It really does help. Thank you. That is all for episode number 56. Stay strong. Do the very best you can. I'll talk to you soon.